Hi, I'm Mason Chaudhry, the CTO of Excion Solutions, and I'm very excited to bring you another topic in conjunction with Reed Lowry, who is our domain expert in agility and IT transformation. If you've listened to the conversations that we brought over the past week, you will know that we have spoken on value in an organization. We've spoken about true agile road mapping. And today we're going to talk about a topic that I think is relevant not only in public sector organizations and commercial organizations, but organizations of all sizes. And that is actually measuring success while you are on your agile journey, in your product journey. And so in that, what Reed and I hope to bring you today are some practical tips and a few examples from real customers to demonstrate how you can set success criteria, figure out in real time where you are, get buy-in, and also look for value. So with that said, Reed, I'd like to start by talking about measuring success in Agile Portfolio Management. Traditionally, you see a lot of silos. You see temporary project teams that come together in that triple constraint and deliver. How should organizations be evolving?
So the interesting thing about that is when those silos and those project teams are set up, it's typically not until you're done with your project that you start analyzing how we did. And the reality is, in a continuous delivery, such as a value stream found within lean engineering, you want to be able to measure that as you go rather than wait till the end of the project to say, oh, we were hugely successful, or whoops, we really overspent. So, addressing it by measuring as we go within the value stream paradigm helps us do that.
And Reed, a lot of organizations have moved past traditional project management to agile development, but what they haven't left behind is how they fund their projects and more importantly, project cost accounting. That's still living in the days of waterfall.
Yeah, so the challenge here is moving to a funding model that helps us fund the product overall. And anything that comes in to augment or adjust the product should be found within that value stream. So, lean funding and getting things together in a participatory funding model is where lean shines. And it's important that we guide organizations down that direction.
Before we go to the next one, why lean, Reed? Maybe we should define that. Why a lean approach?
So, as we talked about previously, lean tries to eliminate as much waste as possible, and it pivots on a dime if we find something's not viable. It enables us to quickly adjust and retarget like we're pointing a fire hose at something far more important.
Brings us to our next point. If you do big upfront annual planning, you can't really pivot, can you?
No, one of the challenges with that, and in my experience, we do that annual budgeting exercise that takes months. And then halfway through the year, oh, budget cuts. We're overspent. We have to cut. The reality is, if we do this in a lean budgeting or a lean portfolio management, we're actually adjusting month to month, quarter to quarter as we go along. So there's no dramatic cuts and there's no ugly surprises as they emerge.
And this is seen in a lot of large enterprises, especially public sector enterprises, where it's centralized, unlimited work intake, a lot of times priorities based off who's loudest in the room. How can organizations take a lean approach to that?
When we look at portfolio management from lean engineering, then we have this concept called the portfolio Kanban. So it's way above the program teams and the organizations, and it enables the lean portfolio management team to be able to prioritize and orchestrate what's important for meeting the visions of our particular company and the themes that we're trying to drive for our organization this year. So strategically managing this with the portfolio Kanban is where we begin.
Absolutely. And then Business cases. It's like throwing darts in a bar. You want to hit the bullseye. We'll hit the bullseye. Give me the dollars and the folks.
Yeah, the exciting thing about doing this using the lean business case model, it enables us to take reality, things that we've already seen, things that we've already experienced, and forecast if we do this, we should get this result. So by doing this initially, it enables us to put some structure around the thoughts and the ideas. And then the big thing is, what is the straw man, the minimum viable product that we should try to accomplish to see if we're on the right track? And if that is, great, we continue down that path. But the big difference here is we've got a milestone of that MVP to hit when we orchestrate with a lean business case.
And then this is something we're seeing even today. You've got organizations saying we have empowered our teams and we are moving away from command and control, but they cannot escape the prison of governance and gates. Governance is not going to go away,
Yeah.
but gating is what frustrates so many teams.
So the issue with phase gates, and having shipped a number of products in my lifetime, every time we get to a certain point, if we have to roll things back and go back, it results in rip and replace and a lot of lost time and missed expectations. So it's important as we iterate in a release train paradigm, we have this ongoing analysis to make sure, are we on track and are we doing the right things, so that we don't have to go back and redo things and re-enter phase gates if something goes sideways.
All right. So what I'm taking from this is if you already aren't, or if you already are not on the lean highway, there's a lot of value to expend energy, resources to develop real value streams,
Yeah,
budget accordingly, have business cases that are iterative, and allow your arts to manage themselves. Is this right?
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So with that said, let's offer our listeners some ideas around measuring success, Reed. And so I start with traditional metrics focus on delivery and employee utilization. What do you say to that?
Well, just because I'm busy and being utilized doesn't mean I'm fruitful.
Yeah,
So it's important to ensure that not only are we focused on little incremental progress, but we're also focused on valuable delivery as we go.
so you're telling me to stop on my velocity measurement and focus on throughput?
Oh, absolutely. Velocity is one of those fun metrics. If you tell me you guys aren't as busy because your velocity is lower, I can change all of the measures for my team and just pump them up one. And that will make me look much busier than I really am. So it's one of those things we call a vanity metric.
Absolutely. So then what is the arbiter of success and solutions and supporting customers?
Well, getting something valuable customers can use. So remember that in Agile overall, our measure of progress is delivering something that can be used. So nothing, if we complete even at the story level, if the story doesn't function, then it's not valuable. So it's important as we develop stories, features, and themes that these things work and they can actually be utilized by the customer.
And so in theory, and I'm sure a lot of folks who are listening today have either read or taken a course on lean delivery or Six Sigma. What is the actual reality on leveraging lean value delivery?
So we cut out a lot of the churn of trying to figure out, did we do the right thing? Have we met the right gates? And ultimately, when we're focused on small, incremental, rapid delivery, it enables us not only to validate what we were trying to do, but assure that it's what the customer expected.
Agreed. And so MVP, that concept's not, it's fairly, I would say 10, 12 years now, most organizations have gone down the MVP path. In
Yes.
2022, what's the value in MVP?
So whether you're building again, if we're starting with a brand new product, that MVP helps us quickly determine, can the customer get value out of this? Or was this just a harebrained scheme that we didn't decide, nope, not going to work? So that MVP helps us quickly take those funds, if it turns out to be the latter, and refocus and move on to something far more fruitful.
So just one tangential question to that. When you look at development of new features for existing applications, are MVPs useful?
Absolutely. New features should always be early prototyped with the minimum that you can to make it functional so that you can determine whether or not it's actually going to get utilized.
All right, fantastic. So then I pivot. This is a question that's being asked in so many organizations, public sector or otherwise. Are we there yet? So a lot of folks see the transition from waterfall to agility, from traditional budgeting to agile budgeting, to the introduction of value streams as the zenith. Are we there yet? And we all know
Mhm.
it's ongoing, it's living, it's organic. And so what we've seen, Reed, is that most organizations have already had the mandate to transform. They have instilled frameworks. We're DAD, we are safe scale, we're a scrum shop, whatever it may be. They've provided initial training, at least to the folks in the teams and on the ground floor. I mean, I'm still suspect if executives are actually getting the training that's requisite.
Right.
And they've put a lot of this into practice. We have a playbook. You hear that? We've got a playbook. Yet they're wondering if they're there yet. What do you say to organizations that have done these steps and are trying to figure out if they're there yet or not?
So the first thing to look at here is, think of it like driver's ed. So if you were to take driver's ed in the classroom and never actually put in any road time, would you consider yourself a qualified driver?
Oh,
And the reality is, anybody with any common sense says no. So it's important to get out there and get some road time. And lo and behold, your teacher, your coach, whoever it is sitting in the passenger seat with his foot next to the emergency brake, just in case. And it's important that you have that kind of hands on side guidance so that as you go through things that first year, you can actually be very successful. So, again, just like driver's ed, don't think just because you've taken a course or three or four that you're ready to go. It's important to get out there and put in some road time to be successful.
absolutely. And so, in that, a lot of the organizations that we support have moved past the checkbox part and are now expending energy, resources,
Yeah.
and a lot of their strategic initiatives are focused on what they first thought was aligning their process to an agile operating model. But what they're realizing it, there's no alignment about it. It's transformation. You are
Right.
transforming the way you understand your spend. You're transforming how you bring together project costs to accounting on the back end, and you're also transforming the way you report. So in all of this, this is still under construction. What advice do you have for organizations as they construct?
So, one of the things that I hear religiously is, oh, Agile is an IT thing. And the reality is, no, Agile is a concept a company should embrace. So, from HR, marketing, everybody should be walking the talk. And if they're not, ultimately what happens is people are requesting things that undermine the efforts of those that are actually doing the work. So, the thing that I would encourage is the organization as a whole should have an ongoing remedial program to help people not only get up to speed, but stay up to speed so that as things emerge and new things are learned, because Agile is a journey, not a destination, it's important that they pass on those learnings and everybody learns from it simultaneously.
Agreed. And so lastly, on this slide, we talk about what is going well and what is not. This is a question that's brought up at every level. You see the executives asking, hey, previously I'd look at a project sheet and see that you're missing your timeline or you're off budget. How am I gauging now if the value stream is producing? What is that value?
So we look at that in three different phases. So when we look at the vision and roadmaps and how we maintain those. So as we look at that, and that's the next slide. The so as we look at that, there's three different things that we want to measure to maintain that checkpoint. There's our quarterly PIs, or what we call the opportunity to synchronize our portfolio. There's also the monthly sync that ensures that not only are we on track, but we're tracking to our plan. And then instead of that annual budgeting thing that we talked about earlier, we've got a biannual. So every 6 months, we've got the opportunity to refocus and adjust based on not only the optimizations we've had, but the new things that are emerging in the market. So by doing these different things, not only can we get people on the same plan and understand what's going well, but we can actually add more to our value backlog based on what we're accomplishing.
Reed, who should be looking at this? We know release engineers and teams are. What about middle managers and executives?
So lean portfolio management typically starts at the senior executive level. They should be involved in this on a recurring basis, not only the every 6 month basis, but every quarter. And we do a process called participatory budgeting. And this allows people that have skin in the game to show up, and it's much like a poker game. So you're given a certain amount of chips you can spend on certain efforts. And if you want to support efforts that your colleagues are working on, you play your chips for those efforts as well as for the efforts that you want to see accomplished. Based on the number of chips that those efforts get, that's where the prioritization in the portfolio Kanban starts.
Okay, so far, just for your scorecard at home, go down the lean path, ensure you're aligned to lean principles, find value through that, leverage roadmaps, allow your executives on down to understand what that cadence is. So with that said, let's actually talk about some measures, some lean measures, and what you think are pertinent in high producing organizations.
So there's 10 different things that we look at in lean measurement. And it's important that we don't try and boil the ocean. So don't try and tag all these at once. What we look at is every organization has two or three things that are real important to them. For example, how well is my portfolio performing? The fifth one down. So we want to make sure, are we tracking to our OKRs? Are we making sure that things are following the strategic themes for our organization? Another one is, how predictable are we? So again, that goes back to utilization. So what we used to track with the people tracking tools, we track as program predictability, not people. So, how predictable are we with what we commit to versus what we deliver? That's a metric that, in my book, if I were spending money, I'd really want to know. And then, how well are we performing? So, when we talk about the value stream itself, are we actually doing and accomplishing those outcomes that our stakeholders are dreaming that we accomplish? And it's important because they actually give us a measure. And we call that their particular measurement. It's their business value. So they give us that measure before we accomplish it. And then once we accomplish it, they say, based on what we got, not only did you hit it, you exceeded, or it's close, but it's not quite what we expected. Could we do a little more? So it's important that we get those subjective measures from our business stakeholders. So pick three and figure out where your organization is, and then target those for a quarter and figure out how are we tracking. Once you've seemed to get them under your belt, take on another one. And over a period of a year, year and a half, you'll get all 10. But it's important, again, don't try and boil the ocean by measuring everything all at once. Focus, and people are really good at doing one thing at a time. So if you can focus on two or three measures that you really want to be focused on, people will achieve and typically exceed what you dreamed of.
So then question on that. You look at the right column, measures. You mentioned three. You mentioned business stakeholders. Who should be evangelizing the adoption of these measures, and who should be ensuring that the measures are being collected and then disseminated?
So again, the biggest cheerleader should be your executives. Everybody should be involved, obviously, but executives need to take the lead and actually be the cheerleader for the effort. People will only do what they feel is important. And if it's a mandate, that's somewhat important. But if somebody's excited about it from the upper levels, everybody gets excited about it. So it's important that executives champion these things and become not only the huge cheerleader for all the people that are doing the work, but encourage them when they're struggling at the same time.
Great. All right. So you speak of lean measures, and I want to come back to something we started our conversation with, and maybe put a couple of some of those measures to play. So we talked about the fact that a lot of organizations are now aligning their budgets, their tooling. They're looking at, hey, my ERPs, my frontline tools, Jira, Confluence, whatever it may be, are they aligned to the way I'm operating with my resources? Can I actually pull the right reporting that tells me if my utilization is correct, my capacity, so on? And so in that, Reed, one of the issues that we see with our customers is an inability to properly transform PPM function in an agile operating model. How can organizations better set expectations and success criteria, for example, in PPM?
So PPM is a great tool for tracking which bucket gets charged. But when it comes to agile performance, it's not necessarily, they don't connect that way. So it's important that we know where the spend is, but use it as a sanity check to figure out the roadmap says we're on this track. It says we're this far along based on what PPM says. That concurs. So use it as a sanity check, but don't use it as an actual measure of progress.
So make sure I hear you correctly. You do set PPM to get your operation moving,
Right.
but it's not a gate. It's not the criteria to see values being driven. Am I getting this right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Much like when we talked about velocity as a measure of delivery, right? It's not.
Yeah. And this is what I think a lot of organizations are struggling with. Do you determine value from the numbers you're getting out of these systems, or
Right.
is there a different path? And what we're hearing, Reed, is there should be a different path. And
There
so
is.
this is a topic that we could spend a whole webinar on. Maybe we'll come back to it one day.
Yes.
So then my second question to you is on resource management.
Mhm.
I've worked with organizations that consider themselves early adopters of technology. They've been in the cloud for many years, yet they still struggle with resources. They've
Yeah.
gone agile for 10 years, but the resource managers are saying, hey, I'm still working in traditional means of managing my folks and placing resources, and it's getting tougher as we become more mature in our agile operating model. How do you determine success there?
So the thing that we encourage people that are resource managers, they used to farm out the work and they used to help direct some of that. We've taken that and given it to the business stakeholders to work with the teams in prioritization. So the guidance that we're asking those resource managers is to focus on career development for your teams and for your individuals. Help them be successful by not only gearing up their tooling, but giving them new opportunities to learn and grow. You'll build monstrous loyalty with those people. And instead of losing them a year after you've trained them, they'll be advocates for bringing in more people because not only are they getting fed intellectually by learning new things, but they're succeeding and being encouraged to do more.
Agreed. So then let's go to a second set of real world problems. We talked earlier in our conversation about setting the right criteria. This is the what is going well, what isn't in real time and long term. And so I give you a couple of other examples.
Yeah.
So we've been asked, to help support the creation of metrics to determine value in product development, product management. What should we be looking for in our value streams? What should we be telling our teams is a benchmark? So describe setting, I wouldn't call it just criteria, but a mindset on how you look at metrics, for example, in product development.
So going back to our earlier slide where we talked about predictability, right? So it's important to not only do what we say, but deliver what we say. The other part of that is if we're delivering junk, it's not valuable. So elevating that bar that says no defects come out of our teams, and that to a lot of organizations is foreign. It's what do you mean no defects come out of your teams? It's the bar is set so high and the teams are so stringent with what they are working on, they always deliver defect free code. So by focusing on zero defects, delivering on time and early, and then making sure we achieve what those people are looking for, our stakeholders, not only do we start creating that value, but we're communicating it on a regular basis by our consistency.
Read another tangential question to this then. In essence, who should be involved in creating metrics around a product? I mean, are you involving developers? Is it just management, executives? How do you go down that path?
So it's a collaborative event. One of the things that we want to do, we don't want to foist metrics onto teams. What we want to do is have an agreement that says, as a team, we're chartered to do this. So not only are we going to do it, we're going to do it defect free. We're going to say what we do and do what we say. We're going to deliver those. And what's interesting is by providing some topics from top down that say, here's things that we're interested in, and then having teams cultivate, here's what we'll do to support those. Not only are they bought in, but they're totally sold because they created the metrics.
Absolutely. Buy-in is key.
Yep.
So I come to another real world example. We have a lot of customers tell us that the value realization, what teams considered value as they develop code or product, compared to what executives see and folks in between, differs quite a bit.
Right.
That there isn't consensus on where organizations are in the development of a product or if what's been developed is bringing value.
Right.
How do you create consensus and then transparency on what that value is?
So it goes back to our lean portfolio model. So from the beginning, top down, we're focused on here's what we want to deliver and here's what this should deliver in our hypothesis for value. Based on that, we then take and promote that with the program that's actually part of that value stream. And the teams are working hand in hand with the people that helped cultivate the hypothesis and are part of the stakeholders that delivered this. So by being involved from the top down and integrated on a regular basis, we go to that planning where there's the three different types of synchronization that goes on with our portfolio. There's the monthly portfolio sync that allows us to ensure not only are we on track, but here's how things are tracking financially. There's the quarterly revisit that helps us adjust our roadmap and make sure that we're on track and again tracking to plan. And then there's the twice a year where we look at our overarching plan. What can we add? What do we decrement based on the newest priorities in the market? So by doing that and having the right people involved, and that includes top down, including teams, we end up with everybody hearing the same thing, everybody understanding the same thing, and a collaborative plan as we roll through this throughout the year.
Well, very good. Well, I'd love to end with a question that kind of encapsulates our three conversations. We've touched on defining value, that is tailored to an organization. We've talked about actual agile roadmaps with real metrics, and today we're talking about what success criteria looks like in real time. In all of this, some organizations tend to pick a framework, pick a playbook, and say, this is our Bible. And this becomes static, right? It's written in
Right.
stone. So what we're advocating here, excuse me, is a living roadmap. Can you
Absolutely.
describe for our listeners what a living roadmap should be for their organization?
Absolutely. So again, it goes to those three different things that we talked about: the portfolio sync every month, the roadmap review every quarter. And again, we adjust that based on priorities. It may not be financially feasible to continue with certain features, or we may want to adjust feature priority. So that roadmap that we've planned for our product, we may have a feature that's 9 months out that we decide we heard that a competitor has that and it's coming out shortly. We need to be preemptive. We're going to move that feature up to the immediate next planning event so that we can get it out before they do. So it's important that we have these regular recurring cadence, and it enables us to stick with our financial plan if we do it in this manner.
Well, Reed, thank you for the three conversations we've had. The beauty of all this is that you've helped organizations drive a lot of these principles that you've described, especially in lean management. And what I've taken from these conversations is that there's an opportunity really to get your executives involved, to create and leverage frameworks that are tailored to your needs, to leverage good roadmaps, to understand what measures really matter to your organization, not what's great in theory. Try not to chew it all at one time, figure out
Yep.
what's prioritized, come in, create that transparency, get the right cadence, and hopefully start bringing consensus in your organization on what value is so that there's more buy-in.
Completely agree.
Well, I appreciate you listening to our three-part webinar series. If you have any questions, any thoughts, or maybe you disagree with something we might have said, we'd love to hear from you. Our email addresses can be found within these webinars. Thank you for joining us. We'd love to speak to you again.